It's about service. It's about
Yeah.
clients wanting more, and the market didn't deliver as I was referring, right? So I realized, well, this is a gap, so let's make it happen. Hi, my name's Andrew, and you are listening to Property Investory.
Wonderful. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on to the Property Investory podcast today. I'm really excited to hear about your story, especially how it's very, very left the field for me. I've never heard this one before, so I'm really, really keen to dive into it. But maybe firstly, start off with sharing with the audience your full name, what you do, and I guess maybe since you've done so much, feel free to brag about it in maybe 60 seconds or less.
Yeah, too easy, mate. My name's Andrew David Courtney. That's the full name. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. Pumping out a ton of reels over there. What is it that I do? I'm a bit of a specialist when it comes to financial planning, mortgage broking, and property. So building portfolios and ultimately helping my clients achieve financial freedom a hell of a lot faster, basically.
Wow,
So
that's
it's a
awesome.
very niche market that we serve. And all in all, mate, since Australians love property, I think we're in a pretty good position to A, first and foremost, educate, right, and B, help them build their portfolio accordingly so that they can achieve their goals a hell of a lot faster.
Yeah,
Essentially,
totally
so
agree.
we run three businesses: a financial planning business, a mortgage broking business, and a property buyers agency. And essentially, I try and overlay the portfolios that I've built myself for my clients, and essentially show them where the pitfalls are, and make sure we stay clear of them, and actually amplify the returns on investment, and build their portfolio a hell of a lot faster than they otherwise would have gone themselves,
That's
basically.
fantastic. Well, Andrew, it sounds like you're a one-stop shop, and I'm going three businesses. That's a lot. How
Yeah,
do
it
you
is,
run
mate.
all of them?
It is absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I run them through having staff. You got to have staff. You got to have a solid team. You got to have obviously a fantastic culture in the team, and essentially a great training program to ensure that all the clients are engaged first and foremost, but more importantly, the staff and employees are engaged too, so that they understand what their roles are and how they help our clients moving forward, and how to keep the businesses sustainable and profitable
Yeah.
as well. So, mate, a lot of things, a lot of projects on the run, that's for sure. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, it's exciting to hear, and I'm very, very pleased to hear that that's what you help your clients with as well. Maybe share with us, I guess, just curious, what's your day to day look like at the moment? Maybe share with the audience, what do you currently do, especially running across three different businesses?
Yeah, so right now, day to day looks a little bit like this. So wake up at 5:30. Ideally, go for a walk, listen to an audio book. Big believer of that particular habit, and listen to it at either 2.5, 3.5 times, depending on how fast the audio book goes or the reader goes, and always asking a specific question. Right? How do I make myself better, or how do I make one part of the business or my life better? And this is how I pretty much operate across the board, right? And then from that, get home, start with the business essentially. Typically, run a morning meeting with my team and work out what are the fires that we're fighting this morning, what are the challenges, and essentially see what action items we need to take to ensure that we know the timelines for all of our clients who are acquiring property, right? And understand the plans that we're building out, and make sure that we do a lot of QA/QC. So right now, for me, I'm transitioning from being the main operator to ideally more QA QC on the business side, because there's so many moving parts. So we're looking for a great operator at the moment to help me transition into more of an educator, trainer, sales and marketing kind of a person in the business. So lots of moving parts when it comes to the three businesses, but ultimately it's about making sure we have a smooth run at the process that we've built out. We're quite systematic in our approach, coming from a science background, which I'm sure you'll hear about soon. We have to be systemized, and we make sure that we've got certain milestones in place so that we can keep moving forward with precision and confidence.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. There's so many moving parts, as you said, in running any business. If you're not systemized, there's no way that you can actually grow, especially when you're running three different businesses. You can't be in every single one of them yourself. You have to actually rely very heavily on a very, very good team of people as well. So I'm assuming you've got a team all locally here, or they all work from home. Like, how's it all work?
Yeah, look, we're currently running a work from home kind of arrangement. So we've got one, two, three, four, five Aussies and about 12 VAs who are overseas,
Great.
basically. So majority in the Philippines,
Yep.
basically. Um, and yeah, so that's pretty much how we operate, mate. So half of the week in the office and half of the week at home. So typically 2 to 3 days per week in the office, and then 2 days at home for sure. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. It
yeah.
sounds great. And let's get to know you a little personally, Andrew. I'd love to, I guess delve into maybe starting off firstly where you grew up.
Yeah, so born in the Philippines, right? So my mum's Filipina and my dad's Aussie. Bit of a mixture. He's a Danish English. Grew up down in Melbourne, right? So born in the Philippines, grew up there until age 10, then moved over to Oz, and fell in love with basketball because in the Philippines basketball was the number one sport, right? So everyone
Yes.
played it, and I was okay. I was probably average at best in the Philippines, but I came to Oz and hardly anyone played that sport. So I was like suddenly the top player in the school. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I started playing more, and essentially looked at in the '90s. Obviously, Jordan was the big dog at the time, and I was
Yes.
looking at him thinking, wow, I want to be like Mike too. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. So the whole time, basically since 11 to 20, I devoted myself to basketball because I was thinking maybe I can make the NBA one day.
Nice.
So yeah, that's me growing up, mate. That's grew up in the Gold Coast essentially, and 2009 moved over to Brisbane, and here we are basically.
Oh, okay. So you
Yeah.
initially originally from the Philippines. At 10 you came to Melbourne, and then from Melbourne you,
Oh
you
no, no,
stayed there.
Gold Coast, Gold
Oh,
Coast.
Gold Coast.
My dad grew up in Melbourne. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay. So you basically went to Queensland straight away, and then you've
correct.
lived in Queensland all your life. That's
That's right.
amazing. So
That's right.
what was it like growing up then? I guess in the Philippines. I'm really curious because yeah, I guess by 10 years old you kind of know what's going on around you, and to have a sudden shift to come to a different country, you probably remember that. So what was it like growing up in the Philippines as a child?
Look, 100%. There's a massive shift, right? Because it's practically a developing nation at the moment. I would argue that it was a third world country back in the day when I was there, right? Seeing, I had friends who were living under tarpaulins, right, with a dirt floor, right. I had lunch with their family, and essentially it was very very basic living over there, right. I was lucky enough to have enough means within my family at the time, but we weren't well to do either, right. So I know how bad it can get essentially. So I'm very grateful for the move, and I'll tell my parents all the time that was
Mm,
the genius move to move over here, because I don't know where we'd be as a family without that move to Australia, right? So really, it's a massive contrast, and it provides me with how should I say it? I guess a great a baseline to work off of, right? So I can, because of that particular experience, I know for a fact that I can go back down there and be comfortable, basically, right? So it gives me the impetus to learn more and take a little bit more risk than the average person would, because I know the baseline is actually reasonably comfortable,
mm.
um, because of where I came from, right? So it's interesting, yeah.
Wow, that is very very interesting. And I mean, I also work with a group of Filipinos over there too, because most of my team is from there as well. And yeah, I mean, especially when there's floods and disasters and stuff like that that happen, it really struggles. Whereas for us in the first world country, when we have sort of flooding and so forth, I mean, obviously we have services and stuff like that, but we're still comfortable in our in homes. Whereas they can lose their homes and they've got nothing left. So I can definitely relate to that, and I can see, I guess how fortunate we are in Australia as we live as well. So yeah, it's really interesting. So what was the main reason for family wanting to move to Australia? Like, by 10 years old, you would have been settled down in school, you would have been, happy going there, but obviously, that's a big shift to move to a different country. How did that come about?
Well, look, I think, since my dad grew up here in my mum's Filipina, she we figured, I think they were of the mindset of, we can get help in the Philippines much easier, right?
Yep.
I.e., like someone to housekeep, right? Someone to cook and clean for us, basically, because my mum and dad were both working full time at the time. right? And half of their work had to go overseas, basically. So essentially, they needed to make sure that we had the support network. As I grew up, I'm also one of four siblings. So essentially, they needed to make sure that we had that support network to ensure that we would have a good upbringing. And my mum was a little bit hesitant, I believe, to come to Australia sooner rather than later, purely because she knew that we couldn't afford nannies here and that kind of stuff, because
Uh,
it's expensive to hire
yes.
local talent to help out, right? So essentially that was the big arbitrage for mom and dad, and really the straw that broke the camel's back was, or the final straw, I should say, was the business opportunities for them really dried up in the Philippines. They got burnt fair few times, and essentially what they decided was, as soon as I hit 10 and my siblings at the time were nearing adulthood, they decided, okay, it's time to move to Australia. Let's sell up and start from zero in Australia and build a new life. So they did that, sold everything, had just enough for the plane tickets, and made the move in 1995. And I'm going to be forever grateful for that move, because I tell you what, I mean, with the health issues that we've had in the family, like I'd say half of us would be gone by now if we were living in the
Wow.
Philippines, right? So Australia's a fantastic country.
Yeah, wow. And that's what I mean. It's just we're so fortunate to live in a country where they have, free healthcare system for, I guess accessing GP services and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, the health system is very, very good over here, and yeah, it's supportive as well too. And as long as you have your private health funds, I guess, for the health side of things, it's really, really covered as well. That's really interesting. So I'm assuming that you mentioned that your siblings are older than you. So which where do you stand in line with amongst the four?
Yeah, I'm the youngest, mate. The eldest is 10 years older than me, and that's my brother, oldest brother, and then I have a sister who's 8 years, and then another brother who's 7 years. So I'm the typical runt of the family who was running around trying to play with everyone. No one wanted to play with me because they were all a hell of a lot older. Yeah, so right now I'm one of those guys that is always looking to involve myself in games and that kind of stuff, because I didn't really quite scratch that itch when I was younger. So I'm a game player of life basically now. So I see everything as a game, and make sure we optimize for the win, essentially.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. And coming to Australia, as you said, your parents pretty much sold up on everything. That would have been challenging, coming to a country where you didn't really have much money and you still need to survive and get over here, because ultimately you've got the plane ticket, you've landed, but then, you got to find work and then support the family. Did you hear any of those stories about from your parents, how they actually, yeah, set up here in Australia?
Yeah, mate, it was tough, right? Like we got help from St Vincent de Paul's, right? So my mum would go around and try and pick up some food for us, because I think we only had like $1,000 amongst that we had. Yeah, there was six of us, right? So
Wow.
so that got us through for the next, I think, for the first 3 weeks, and then during that time, my mum and dad were basically just scrounging around looking for work, making sure that they got enough food for the next week, right? So it was a really tough gig, until such a time where so my mum's a professional pianist and singer, so she got her first gig at one of the hotels in the Gold Coast. Fantastic. So that was great. And then my dad picked up a managerial role in one of well, it was a time zone actually. So I really enjoyed that. Holy
Of
moly.
course.
Cut my teeth in a few video games there, mate. So that was really good. But yeah, so prior to that, mate, it was hard going, but they didn't really show us what the issues were. So they did a fantastic job of hiding the stress that they would have felt, right? So all in all, mate, it was a stellar job that they've done.
Wow, kudos to your parents, I guess. They've done a very good job working hard to be able to help raise, especially four kids. It's not easy to live and raise four kids in Australia. The cost of living here is so high. And I guess it hasn't really changed much back then, even though things are slightly different. Prices are a lot cheaper back then, but still, raising a family in Australia has never always been cheap. So I can totally understand that. Yeah, she would have been really, really hard, for everyone as a family. And I guess school-wise, did they send you to school, or were you helping out somewhere along the lines during that time? Because by 10, you'd be in primary school. Would that be correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, primary school. They sent me to the local primary school. We lived really close to the beach, so learnt how to. I was a nipper, right? So learnt the Aussie way basically, and went to the local primary, public primary, and went through that, and was sent to a Catholic high school basically.
Yeah.
So my parents managed to get me through there, and all as well. Really, they managed to do a good job actually throughout that time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned that your oldest sibling is 10 years older than you. So he would have been 20. And I'm assuming then when he came here, would he have gone to do further education or did he go straight out to get into the workforce?
Yeah, straight out into the workforce. All three of them, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't want to pursue because I think the other two needed to do one more year of high school. The oldest, he unfortunately couldn't get credit for his. I believe he did 1 or 2 years worth of university in the Philippines. It wasn't quite enough to get credit for uni here,
Mm.
so he had to sort of go back, and they didn't feel the need to do that. And I tell you what, the Aussie dollar relative to the Filipino peso is very tempting for young adults. So
Yeah.
off they went and worked at McDonald's and nightclubs and pretty much did the partying thing as a 18 and 20 21 year old do basically.
Yes. Yes.
And so they experienced that for the first few years basically, and started making their own money. So unfortunately for them, they didn't keep studying, and I think that's probably a big regret for them
Mm.
because they're sort of they didn't have a solid foundation for themselves as we moved over here in Oz.
Yeah, and that's what I was just saying. Like, that's the reason why I asked because I'm sure that having an extra person out earning income to support the family also must have helped because that was very much, and I can relate to that because that was what happened with my family. My dad came here with his four siblings, and he had to literally from a very young age, at like 20, just start working restaurants and did 3 or 4 different jobs to support the family. So it was a hard life back for them, and I can understand that. I guess to be able to support the family is most important because you just got to have food on the table. But for you, I guess it sounds like you're very fortunate that you got to go to school. You went through to high school, and then after high school, where did you go from there?
Yeah, mate. So I was chasing after a scholarship to go to the US because being in high school, I was still 17 at the time, and I still had that dream of becoming the next Michael Jordan.
Yes.
um, so so basically, started my first year of uni as an exercise scientist. So hoping to get into physiology, no physiotherapy at the
Yeah.
time,
Yes. Yes.
right? As I was working towards the NBA, basically. So I managed to get a scholarship actually to go play in British Columbia, to revert back to high school for one more year of high school and hopefully get into college over there. But unfortunately, this is when then one of the many realizations really hit me that we weren't financially well off. Where I had the money, I was working Woolworths at the time, and basically to travel over there, but I didn't have enough buffer. So in the 11th hour and 59th minute, they sent me an email asking me if I had $10,000 in a bank account for emergency purposes, basically. So I
Wow.
asked my parents that, and they didn't have it, and my brother and my siblings
Mm.
didn't have it either. So I had to give up on that particular dream. And then right then
Wow.
and there, I knew I needed to get out of exercise science, and the next dream was medicine, basically. So I started a biomedical science degree, tried it as a pre-med, trying to get into med, got into a few interviews. Unfortunately, got pipped to the post. Essentially, started working as a scientist, and during that time, I met my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and we wanted to move out of home. So this is now 23, right?
Hmm.
So basically, started working honors and started my honors degree, and started working full time at the same time. I was fortunate enough to find that, and with that, we invested in our first one bedroom apartment in Budds Beach in Service Paradise, right? 5% down, basically.
Yeah.
First homeowners grant when it was available with existing property at the time. So got in hardly any money in, and got it for 200 grand, and basically moved out. And then 9 months later, it was valued at 250.
Wow.
And well, what we did was we basically pulled some equity out and acquired the next one, along with a few other bits and bobs that we did at
Yeah.
the time to ensure that we leapfrogged across into our next property, basically. So circling back to the question, mate, yeah, that was so university degree. We went with biomed, did honors, and during that time, I studied a PhD, hoping to get into med. right? So 6 months into the PhD, I realized it wasn't quite right for me. And during that time, I've read Kiyosaki's books and all of those kinds of finance books that got me thinking, wow, this is it. This is it. This is for me. So I moved from the PhD, started working as a research assistant, and came across Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week.
Ah, yes. Yes, I
And I
love
was
that
thinking to
book.
myself, oh, damn, there's no way I can do the 4-hour work week as an employee, as a scientist, right? So I was trying to get out of science and realize there's no way I can start a business as a scientist. At that time, I had different, obviously, limiting beliefs in my head
Yes.
at the time, and I thought, okay, let me just keep reading. Let me work out what the next steps are, and basically found a couple of mentors from my network at the time who were doing financial planning, right? So I thought, you know what? I caught myself talking to all the scientists about their finances and how to optimize for a better outcome. Because by this stage, we built up a 3-property portfolio, basically one with development potential, and the other one with multiple renovations that we've done. So we've built up enough equity to build momentum. And I was talking to people about their portfolio, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna try and get into finance because this is what I'm passionate about. I can't stop thinking about it. Medicine's
Mm,
great, but I realize it's not really about the money. It's about freedom and flexibility, and
mm,
you can get your money elsewhere in life.
mm.
I was very kind of hyper focused on medicine because it was my auntie at the time, down in Melbourne, who's the well-to-do one in the family, and she was a medico, right? So and then I realized, well, it's not really about your job. It's about, well, what else you do outside of your job,
Yes.
right? If you start investing, you can start building massive momentum for yourself, and thereby taking a little bit more risk, right? And you can potentially build your own business, right? So I knew I wanted to go down that path, and I basically found some mentors and transitioned from science into finance and learned the ropes on how to be a financial advisor and run a small business. That was back in 2013. Yeah.
Wow. So let's take a step back. You studied in biomedical science. Did you actually go and work in that field as well as a
Yeah,
researcher? Yeah.
yeah, I did. I did melanoma research to begin with, and then did breast cancer. So for my PhD, that I didn't finish, right?
Yeah.
Did that for about a year, and then I did about 4 years worth of developmental biology, basically,
Yeah.
right? So learning the different pathways of development, essentially. Um, and from there, that's what I'm very grateful for my boss at the time, and I was working at UQ as a researcher, and she allowed me to work full time while studying full time because I studied a Master of Commerce majoring in applied finance. So that was a year and a half where I was working full time and studying full time. So it was
Wow.
hectic as all hell, right? And that's when I transitioned post those studies, basically. So good solid 6 years worth of experience in the medical research field. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you would have seen a big contrast as well. Going from, I guess, blood cells, and all that kind of stuff, the human body,
Yep.
to
Yep.
finance, which is numbers and papers, and I don't know if we've got papers now, but it's more like on the screen and so forth. So how did you actually go? Okay, this transition, because it sounds like you're very well versed in academia, but also at the same time very well versed in the mortgage space and finance space as well too.
Yeah, well, look, the transition was, as far as I was concerned, it was really easy in the theory space, right? The
Mm.
hardest part was the soft skills. The hardest part was talking to people about their finances, because
Oh,
I was very logical, right?
yeah.
It was you do this and this, suddenly it just makes perfect sense, but people don't people don't think the way scientists do, right? So
Yes.
I had to really take a step back and sort of peel the onion as best as I can for people so that they can actually take action to put themselves in a better position. So I had to relearn the way I communicated because I was very direct and I was
Mm.
very logical, because you had to be in science, right?
Yeah.
So I had to relearn that communication skill and really kind of work out, well, how do you best communicate the strategies for people so that you can increase the likelihood of them moving forward and getting things done for their lives and putting themselves in a better position, right? So that was one of the big ones, and then the next big one was bloody running a small business, right? I had no clue how to run a small business. I knew how to build portfolios, right? But I didn't know how to run a small business. So that's when I transitioned from the old role in AMP into a independent, like, boutique firm where my mentors were, right? So they mentored me throughout that transition, and then I started my own business within their business. So I learned what not to do and what to do
Ah,
within the small business context. In 2016, decided to start my own, basically, and that's Plenitude.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And by that time, how many properties would you say you've purchased by then?
No, at that stage three.
Yeah.
So the three properties allowed us to do the career change, right?
Oh, gotcha.
So as you're well aware, that the property is a fantastic asset to leverage against, right? Because obviously there's no margin calls. You wouldn't want to leverage at 80, 90,
No.
95% on shares, right?
No.
Because you can lose it in a heartbeat, right? So in
Yes.
property you can do that, right? So that's pretty much what we did. We leveraged up, we pulled out a bunch of equity, and we moved into the space where I knew there was. So I'm an investor at heart, right? And then during that time, as I transitioned, I realized, wow, this new asset class right here, the business, is actually the highest leverage form of asset class
That's
that
right.
you can get into. If you do it right, and if you learn, and obviously there are so many lessons in running a small business, obviously, and getting it to a medium size or a bigger business, right? So many lessons that you need to go through. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to tackle this challenge, right? So essentially, I knew there was going to be a bit of a lull. What they say about learning, right? There's this uninformed optimism, and as you go down and you learn, you get to the valley of despair. You learn informed pessimism, right? And post the valley of despair, as you go up, you get to informed optimism and then mastery, right? So
Yeah.
I was the uninformed optimist, basically going down and through the valley of despair, learning about business. And then now, over the past couple of years, we've really kind of picked up, and mastery has arrived. And the businesses is doing well. And now we're getting back into the property space again because we've reinvested into the business, into the skill sets that we needed. And then now we're building our own property portfolio alongside of all of our clients as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So just tell me, how did the business expand? Because initially, when you first started, it would have been one business, and then over time, it's expanded into those two other areas as well. How did that evolve over that time?
Sure. So being a property investor first and foremost,
Yes.
right? I went through a Master of Commerce asking my professors what happened to property. Like what happened to property as an asset class? They started talking about A REITs, and I'm like, yeah, that's nice. It's good. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind diversifying across different asset classes, but man, where's the residential property piece? Where's the personal finance? Right. So I was going through this Master of Commerce, supposedly one of the top things that you can do in the finance field, and there's nothing to do with personal finance. So I thought, wow, okay, this is very, very different. So I went into financial planning. No one talked about property. So I'm like, holy crap, this is a massive opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So as I was building up my client base and talking to people about their portfolios, obviously property conversation came up. Majority of financial planners did not know anything about property. Whereas I already built my property portfolio, built up enough momentum to make a career change and build massive confidence in my IP at the time. So
Mm.
I was comfortable talking about property, basically. So during that time, I realized, oh, I need to work with a strategic mortgage broker,
Yeah.
right? So basically, built out that network, started talking to my clients. This is what we're going to get up to. Okay, this is what you need to do, da, 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 basically, and then refer to the mortgage broker. Some of them did their job, others didn't, right? And then I realized, man, the clients aren't really being serviced as well as they could be, right?
Yeah.
So that's when we decided, okay, let's make it happen. So my wife and I basically became mortgage brokers, right?
Oh,
So my wife was a scientist too. So she transitioned over a few years later after I built proof of concept within the financial planning, right? She transitioned over and became a mortgage broker with me, right? And basically led that team. And we built out the mortgage broking arm so that we can service our clients better, right?
gotcha. Gotcha.
And then the natural progression is obviously the buyer's agency piece, right? Because our clients were spending 200, 300 hours worth of research. We provide them with all the information, right? But they can't pull the plug. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't really know how to spend the right hours to actually put a deal together. And what happens is they'd spend 6 to 8 months looking for a property with no success, right? So I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm going to need to build out this particular service because the other buyers agents didn't quite fit the bill when it comes to the analytics, right? So we would always provide reports. This is why we do X, Y, Z. This is the kind of trajectory we're looking at, just making sure that we're holding our clients' hands the whole way through. So
Yeah.
really, to answer your question, mate, it's about service. It's about
Yeah.
clients wanting more, and the market didn't deliver as I was referring, right? So I realized, well, this is a gap, so let's make it happen, right?
That's
So
amazing.
so essentially, that's how we built the businesses out.
That's great. That's excellent. Well, Andrew, so I'm really curious, Andrew. You've obviously built a portfolio. You've started helping a lot of clients. You've got 3 businesses that are supporting them in all these avenues. So you've kind of pretty much created a one-stop shop. Maybe share with us, I guess, along your journey, because you've built up your portfolio continuously. Did you have any sort of challenging moments, or maybe a worst investing moment along the time that you could share with us, a lesson that you've learned?
Well, look, the worst investing moment would have been definitely this is the one better. The first investment that we made, it was a good short term investment, but long term it didn't appreciate in value that much, right?
Oh,
So essentially, because it was a one better, it was a 56 square meter. Lucky I didn't buy under 50 square meters, right? One bedroom apartment in a 96 apartment block,
oh,
basically,
wow.
right? So very very low land content. So that was a big lesson for me because like I would have kept it by now, right? I sold it off a few years ago because it just wasn't performing, and I needed my borrowing capacity to ensure that we keep moving forward with confidence, right? So in terms of worst investment, that was it, but I don't really see it as a worst investment because the lessons that we got out of that, and it allowed us to propel into the next chapter, right? To acquire our next home, basically,
Yeah.
right? So essentially, that's pretty much it. I think that's the big lesson.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So I guess that first property that you purchased, that was something for you and your now wife to move in, just to at least have a place of your own, right? And I
that's right.
guess was that sort of just intentionally purchased because that was within your affordability range, or you just went out and go, I like that place and that's why you bought it?
Affordability for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we went to the bank. What can we borrow? This is how much you can borrow. Off we go. Yeah.
yeah.
So affordability, we got in, and essentially as soon as my wife's friend, we had a long distance relationship for a little while there. She moved over here, found her first job. We combined forces and bought our first home, basically, first house, I should say,
Yes.
right? And then from there, didn't really look back. So worst house in a good street, right? Great suburb. We renovated it, pulled out equity, acquired another property, and off we went basically from there.
That's
Yep.
great. So how many properties do you currently have in your portfolio as a whole?
Well, currently we only have two, right?
Yeah.
So this financial year is the first financial year where we're quite profitable when it comes
Yeah.
to the business.
Yep.
So for next financial year, we're looking to so that third property that we picked up has got development potential. So we picked that up in
Ah,
2011, right?
yes.
So it's appreciated. It's more than doubled in value now. We're just about to pull some equity out, reinvest back into the development, and then build out two more properties behind it,
Yep.
basically.
Oh,
That'll be
that's
cash
awesome.
flow positive, plenty of equity, go again, essentially.
Well,
Right.
let's talk about that particular one. I'm always interested in development sides as well. How did you come across that particular one? Because it sounds like a very good deal there.
Yeah, look, it's a Marsden property. We picked it up back in 2011, and we knew at that time. So we did a few renovations at the time. We did a reno for our current home, and we did no one reno at the time, and we added about 170K worth of upside. We put in about 50K worth of reno, and we had 170K worth of upside.
That's
We
great.
pulled out about, I think it was about 70K, and then from that 70K, we plowed that into this other one. And we knew we wanted a renovator, right? So as far as I'm concerned, like there are four key strategies in residential properties. It's buy and hold, buy, renovate and hold, buy, develop and hold, buy, renovate, develop and hold, right?
Yes.
So essentially we wanted a renovate, develop and hold deal, right? So we picked this one up for 300K back in 2011 in Marsden. It had a 1,500 meter block, right?
Wow.
And essentially we looked at the council, the zoning, and all that kind of jazz. Made sure that we could develop, right? And it was a bit of a crapper, to be honest. It needed good renovation. So what we did was we negotiated access prior to settlement. This is one of the common strategies that we do for our clients, right? Access prior to settlement to renovate and make better, right? Because there were a few holes in the wall, obviously a bad tenant
Mm,
previously, right? And the owner just wanted to get rid of it. So we picked it up. We had access for 3 weeks prior to settlement, and we renovated the whole thing. Settled, put a tenant in there, bang, done. So we increased the rent by about $50, right, per week,
that's
right?
great.
So we automatically got our cash back. We plowed in 15K on the reno, and it valued 30K above, right? This is day one, right, of acquiring it. So we knew we had a good one, right, and we knew we had the option or the lever to pull the development in the near future,
Mm.
right? And during that time, we knew that it was only a matter of time until we develop it, right? So really, that was when I was transitioning from science into finance, basically working out what the story was. So we didn't develop sooner purely because the idea was a career change. The idea was to chase after freedom more, right? And to do that, it was to go down the path of building a business, right, and a successful one at that, and then build enough enterprise growth, right, value, so that we can go ahead and keep acquiring properties along with building businesses as well,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a very smart strategy. So, what are you planning to do with this particular development? I think you mentioned you're going to build two at the Black or something like that. Is that the whole
that's right.
plan? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Build two at the back. So we'll be putting a little battle axe block, a double battle axe basically,
Yep.
right, and split it into three places where people can rent basically, and then just put some basic houses there. Nothing
Yeah.
flash,
Yep. Yep.
just solid houses that people can rent and we can get some good yield out of.
Definitely. So it sounds like, you'll go from say two properties easily to four. You double instantly because you're adding value to your own properties as well. So
100%.
that's a very quick multiplier way rather than having to go and buy another property to do the same thing again.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So you've obviously now gained a lot of experience, not only through helping your clients in your business and so forth like that. What do you think? And you may have touched on this already as well. Has been one of your biggest aha moments along your journey?
The biggest one was the fact that you can leverage up. Basically, that was the biggest one. Back in 2008, when I first realized this, I was so we bought that first property, right? One better, one bath. I was thinking, let's plow in as much money into the offset account and save myself $2 for every $1,000, $2 per week for every $1,000 that I put in there. I'm
Yes.
gonna, I'm gonna save so much money to save on interest, right? So at that time, I was thinking, okay, this is the strategy. And then I came across a particular DVD, right? And that DVD showed the power of leverage, right? And I can't remember the exact name of that one, of the person there, but in the end of the day, he talked about putting in as little as 5% deposit,
Mm.
gaining control rather than ownership, right? So during that time, I was like, okay, this is different. Okay, let me run the numbers. So obviously, I'm very analytical, right? So I ran the numbers and I thought, wow, okay, you're putting in maybe 10% max to control the upside of the property, and if that property grows by 5% per year, right, and you're putting 10% in,
Oh,
well, guess what? On growth, you're getting 50% ROI, aren't you? Cash on cash,
that's right.
right? So I was like, is this for real? So what I did was I projected out and I thought, okay, in 12 years' time, I'm going to be a billionaire. Because I was projecting out 10, 15% growth per year at that juncture, right? So very excited at that time. So that was the aha moment. I was like, okay, well, how do I leverage up? How do I ensure that I buy the right property first and foremost, right? And make sure that it's research backed, right? And make sure that you're buying well, right? Because a lot of people fall for that trap, obviously,
Mm.
right? Thinking that every property is the same. But yeah, the aha moment is the leverage play, right? And amplifying the return on investment with good debt, right?
Mm.
That was the aha moment.
That's great. And I think that's the key thing is that when people actually realize how powerful it is to just put minimal in and leverage the rest off from, good debt with the banks or private lending or whatever, then you actually start owning assets and these assets can throw off a bit of cash, and if you have enough of them, it allows you to be able to leverage up much more to be able to purchase more and grow that portfolio.
100%.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about strategy. I know you've touched on it a bit, with what you've done within your personal portfolio, and you said that you're also building alongside with your clients with your own portfolio as well too. What is the current strategy that you're also sharing with clients and yourself, and how has that, I guess, come to fruition? And maybe perhaps share a case study behind it.
Yeah, look, well, quick case study. You've got a client who didn't know how to get into property, right? So I talked to them. Okay, they got plenty of savings, right? So this is back in 2019. I thought, okay, this is what you can do. 20% deposit, right?
Yep.
You've got more than enough for that. You don't need to do much more. Like these guys had 900 grand in the bank. Professionals, they were really just struggling to take the next step. So
Yeah.
they had a bunch of, or not 900 grand in the bank, they had 900 grand in gold, believe it or not, right?
Wow.
So essentially, and then they had about 200 grand in the bank, and I was telling them, you know what you can do is you can actually acquire property with debt, right? And it's not really going to cost you that much. So what's your rent, right? So they told me they were paying about 600 per week, and I said, well, if you look at it from a perspective of principal and interest payments, you're capable of borrowing $800,000 equivalent to $600 per week. And they're like, whoa, really? I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. And then I talked them through, and I said, you don't have to put in a 50% deposit, guys. It's fine, right? You got enough cash, just put in 20%, see what happens.
Yep.
So what we did was we helped them negotiate a particular property, and we bought this property under market by at least 200 grand for them.
Oh, wow.
And believe it or not, it was on our street. So they acquired this property for 900, right? 1 year later, guess what the valuation came back at?
Easily over a mil something. Maybe
1.3.
Wow.
1.3 mil, right? And they still had 900 grand in gold. So I started talking to them. Well, why don't we look at a different property, right? Why don't we acquire a different one, because we can make your money work for you. So we started diversifying their portfolio across different asset classes as well, because you obviously don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And then the next property that we looked at acquiring is a property in Toowoomba, right? So we acquired this property in Toowoomba. We bought it for $395. The valuation came back at $440, right? So the key is to buy under median. It's really as simple as that. Under median. Now, we bought it at $395 because it was a bit of a crapper, unfortunately, right? So there was a family there, old person living there for quite some time, needed to go to retirement, lived there for 30 years, vinyl flooring, ugly paint walls, all of that kind of stuff. So we facilitated the renovation, and it's costing them 12 grand to rip up the floor, new painting, new kitchen, right? And we've got this 4-bedroom house right now. I would say if we were to sell it in the market, we'd get 460, 470 for it easy, right? So now they've pulled out, they've acquired a property. It's grown. So the first property, it's grown by 400 grand. The second property, it's grown by 70 grand upon settlement, 60 grand upon 2 months, 1 month after settlement, right? And they're thinking to themselves, well, of course we're going to go again, right? It doesn't make sense not to, right? As they divest out of gold, we're also getting them a diversified return on investment around that 14% mark. So they're doing really well for themselves. And they start to see, holy crap, we're not actually stuck here. We're in a really powerful position, right? We work out their cash flows. We make sure we automate a few things. So suddenly we're dollar cost averaging in a diversified portfolio. We're building up their equities in their property portfolio. We're helping them with their debt strategy. We're doing some debt wash. So we're just about to do a debt wash with their current principal place of residence. And then the question is, well, how much risk are you willing to take, right? Because in the end of the day, they're in a really powerful position. So they can go hard and pull out a bunch of equity and go up to 80% loan to value ratio in their principal place of residence as an investment loan, right? And go again, maybe acquire 2 or 3 more properties, right? Or just do it one step at a time, acquire one property every 1 or 2 years.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they're going down that path because they just want to see more results.
Yes.
Right? Build momentum, build confidence, see more results. And then now we're talking about acquiring in a discretionary trust, right? Because it makes sense, right? Their children are starting to get older, right? As they get older, you can start distributing income towards the children, right? And potentially when they sell, obviously with different rules with the taxes, we need to make sure that that's right, right? To distribute capital gains towards children, right? So the next, as you can probably tell, the next venture that we'll be looking to start in terms of the business is definitely going to be accounting, right?
I was going to say that, looking at the tax side and
100%, because it's all about providing our clients the most seamless experience as possible, right?
Yes.
So let's not forget. So there's the superannuation piece. You got to get that right. So we build a portfolio that's outperforming by 2% against the majority of industry super funds, right? Over the long term. So that's obviously going to be a big difference, right? So we look at the different strategies within the financial planning context. We look at the different strategies within the finance strategy context, right? And then we look at the buyer's agency piece and build out their property portfolio as strategically as possible to get as high cash on cash return on the equity that they've got, control the upside, and basically minimize the downside risk. And hey, presto, you've got a really solid optimized portfolio, optimized for growth, right? And then it becomes unstoppable, mate. You know?
I was gonna say, man, you just have everything all set up there, and you may as well just go, "Here's the plan, follow it," and you're said and done.
And that's exactly what we do, mate. And
Yeah.
it's an amazing process, right? I actually just talked my brother-in-law through what we do this morning. It just blew his mind. He comes from Holland. He's a management consultant,
Oh,
and
yes.
he's a high-powered M&A guy, mergers and acquisitions guy, working in a fairly big startup in Holland. And he's like, "Well, this makes perfect sense. I mean, why wouldn't anyone do this?" I'm like,
Exactly.
"Absolutely." That's the beauty of it, right? Bringing it all together to optimize for a best outcome, basically.
Yeah,
You know,
totally,
so
totally. Wow, that is phenomenal. And yeah, I'm kind of like, okay, this makes absolute sense. It's just a matter of executing. Once you've got that plan in place, then you really, really just got to execute, what you've learned or what you can actually apply. I'm actually
100%.
curious. This example that you gave, which is fantastic case study, you said gold. Are you talking about gold bars that they've got stored away somewhere, or is it just valued? Like, how does that work?
Gold that is stored, absolutely, it's stored. I asked them, "Can you please take a selfie when you get in that bloody vault?"
Vault.
Because it is a vault. They go into a vault and they pull out their special case full of bars of gold, right? And they say, "We're going to sell this." And I tell you what, the brokerage is pretty high, because it's physical assets, right? And look, it's a different. I don't know what got them to invest in gold that way, but hey, all the power to them. And
Oh
now
yeah.
we're sort of diversifying a little bit more, and we're getting them a little bit higher returns than where they were. So it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, gold has done exceptionally well because going back there, it was only a few $100s. Now it's over 1,000. So if you had enough of it, which it sounded like they did, they've made a substantial amount of wealth in their gold. So yeah,
They
it's not.
have to,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah. So that's. But it's very unusual because I've not heard many people do that, and probably one of the first I've heard that actually still have gold inside a vault because. Half the time I'm looking at either a property or just looking at an account, and everything's just numbers and dollars.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, let's jump into sort of the mindset side of things. I know you sort of touched on it a little bit already, but let's kind of just delve into what's your biggest why behind what you're doing right now.
Well, look, as I was sharing earlier, like I wasn't well to do. Like my family's not well to do financially, right? So I knew I needed to get out to get my freedom, right?
Mm,
To get my freedom and flexibility, which is what life is all about for me, right? So my biggest why is helping as many people to do that, right? And how we do that is through educating people. So
yes.
we're pumping out a bunch of content, right? And the idea, and one of the big missions in the company in Plenitude, is to educate 1 million people before we get to 10 years in business, right? So we're now almost in six years, right? Where we're about 70,000 in. So we need some
Wow.
help, right? So as far as I'm concerned, my goal is to build out our team doing the same stuff,
Yeah.
right? Doing more podcasts like this, making sure that we spread the word, making sure that people understand that there is financial education out there. It's time to get financially literate and
Mm,
understand your real options rather than what the government's telling you. Because I can tell you right now, $60,000 in retirement is nowhere near enough.
no way. No way.
Yeah, and the government's telling people that that's enough. I mean, what is this? This is just it's complete bullcrap, really.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to get that right, and the biggest why is increasing financial literacy across the board, right? So if we can get that right, happy days.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think you've got a fantastic goal, and a driving passion to be able to do that because, as you said, $60,000 is just enough just to cover everyday living expenses. But what about actually having a quality of life? There's no way that anyone can really do that. I mean, the expenses are so high and the cost of living, I think most families can't even live off $60,000 a year. So yeah,
100%.
it definitely need to make a huge change in that financial literacy is such an important part. And somehow it's got to be started from the beginning where we kind of try to get them through into the school system, which is where I think it's lacking. Because obviously after kids finish their school, what's been told, you just go out and get a job. But obviously getting a job isn't going to be enough. You need to actually understand why you're doing all that and how to build
Exactly.
your wealth as well too. Wow,
100%.
amazing. So you talked about a few mentors. You read some books as well. Rich Dad Poor Dad sort of impacted you. Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, which has been great. I know that's probably been a huge, huge impact on my life. But were there any other particular resources, or could be podcasts, books, or anything that has also had a huge impact on your life that you'd like to share with the audience?
Look, one of the things, what I'd love for the audience to have a look at is type in Kobe Bryant valuetainment. Type that in and get your mind blown about the mentality that you need to achieve success, greatness in your endeavors, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that really struck me with that one, you've obviously seen that interview. One of the biggest lessons that I got from that one was Kobe Bryant, obviously one of the best basketball
Basketballs.
players ever, right? He said he treats the world as his library to solve every problem that he's currently facing, right? So that was the biggest thing. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's exactly what I've been doing for the past 10 years in my life, right? This is the way to do it, right? You've got so many people who have written a ton of books. You've got people like yourselves making a ton of content to actually lift people up. So all you need to do is work out what problem are you trying to solve, right? There are a bunch of books out there, so you may as well stand on the shoulders of giants.
That's right.
Right? It doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel, right? So there's this particular psychological concept called the zone of proximal development, right? There's only so much you can achieve as a person, right? So this is what you can achieve as a person. But if your goal's out here, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that because you need to stretch out what you can achieve. Now, there's only so much stretching you can do, right? So what you need to do to get to these kinds of targets is you need to get the right people in your team, right? You need to get the right coaches, consultants, right? The right team members to allow you to expand the output that you are capable of doing, right? So as soon as I learned that, I was like, wow, yes, that's exactly what I need to do, right? And ultimately, we've gotten to where we are because we've gotten the right consultants, the right teachers, the right mentors at the exact time that we needed it, right? So what I suggest your audience do is have a think about, well, who are the players in my team, right? And who's the next one that we need in there to get us to the next level, right? Because there are levels to this game.
Yeah.
And if you get the right people behind you, it's amazing what you can achieve within 1 to 2 years, right?
That's
Let alone 15.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I love that mindset. It's such a huge shift because ultimately, for myself, I always keep thinking, how am I going to achieve this? But when you actually shift and go, how can you get people to help you to achieve your dream and your goal, and to expand that perspective, then it changes the ball game altogether. And a lot of it as well too, for people to not achieve their dreams and goals or even just to do anything seems to be held back by fear. How have you, for example, overcome some of that? Because I don't know about you, but to expand that much, to reach a goal of 1 million people to impact is quite a big, ginormous goal.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's some things that you probably want to try and do to try to, get to that point. But what have you done to help you overcome that?
Well, look, the fear factor is one of those things that you decide what you fear the most, right? I mean, back to my original story of coming from the Philippines. I've come from nothing. I will easily go back to nothing.
Yeah.
Easily, right? And I will build up a hell of a lot faster because of the lessons along the way, right? So if you've got that kind of growth mentality and a mentality of abundance, right? I think that's the key. If you're grateful for what you have, right, and you understand how you got to where you are, you learned your lessons along the way, and you come from a abundant mentality rather than a scarcity mentality, right? You know you can get it back. Therefore, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? You're living in Australia.
So yeah, I mean, like the worst you could happen
Centrelink.
is someone.
Centrelink.
Exactly.
Worst case scenario, you live in Australia, you move to a low socioeconomic environment, you rebuild in a 3 to 5 year period. That's the worst case scenario for me, right? That's nothing. That's comfortable. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. People need to toughen up their mind. We need to build calluses in our minds, right? And one of the key things that I do to help build those calluses is put myself in really uncomfortable situations, And one of the key things that I've learned over the past few years is you can fast. Like I fasted for 26 days straight, no food, just water, right?
Okay.
And I put myself in a position where I was in agony, right? And I know what the depths of hell feels like, right? So all of this stuff is nothing. It's nothing, really. All of the fears, it's nothing. You'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just push through. It's all good.
I
Find
gotta,
someone who's done it before.
I
Make it
gotta,
happen.
I gotta ask you this question: why would you put yourself through 26 days of fasting? That is insane.
Mate, I was actually going for 30 days. So I'm a bit devastated that I didn't get it. So I'm still running. I'm still going for that 30-day fast goal that I've got. It's nagging at me a little bit. So why would I do it? Look, I tend to challenge myself. I always want to push the boundaries. I always ask, how do I make it better?
Yeah.
And when I set my mind to something, I get obsessive, right? And at that juncture in my life, I was obsessed about fasting, and I knew I wanted to push the boundaries, and I really wanted to test myself. So at that time, I thought, yeah, let's make it happen. So I did.
Wow, I thought it was a bet or something that you couldn't lose. That's full on. That is full on.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy, but yeah. Yeah. It was a great experience, and going back to the question of fear, like fear is in between your ears. You
Mm,
know, you don't have to fear things. You just understand what's the worst case scenario,
yeah.
and really define it. Because far too many people talk about it broadly without really defining it. As
Mm,
soon as you define it, then you can start risk mitigating against every single line item that you come up with,
yeah.
right? Because people make a big monster out of it when the fact of the matter is they're only little thoughts, right? So what I suggest people do is, if any fear comes up, what you need to do is define exactly what the worst case scenarios are and all of the little bits and pieces, because far too many people blow it up to be something huge, but it's
Mm,
not.
mm. That's very, very good. Very good. Well, Andrew, I guess wanted to sort of just ask a few sort of these kind of, I guess, finale questions. Is say you met yourself 10 years ago, and you could go back in time, met yourself 10 years ago. What do you think you would have said to him?
Oh my gosh. In multiple sentences, or what would it be? Like, are there any restraints to this thing? Am I going
No,
to
no, no
hang out with
restraints.
this
If
person?
you had that
Okay.
chance and you could go back in a time machine and go, hey, Andrew, this
10
is what
years
I want to
ago.
say to you.
That was okay. Yeah, well, look, I was just transitioning from science into finance. I would say I would tell I would give him some stock tips. I would definitely share the story of Amazon. I'd talk about Elon and Tesla for sure.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
I would definitely drop the crypto gem on that person. I'd be telling them, go all in, mate. Let's make it happen. Just yeah, get a cash out loan, load up, and wait and see what happens, mate. That's
Yeah,
that's the on the finance side. Keep doing what you're doing, right? Get help sooner, right?
yeah.
Stop being a hero. Stop doing everything yourself, right?
Mm,
Because there's only so much you can do. One person can do. So if you get the right team behind you, you can move a hell of a lot faster, right? And always, always, always stay curious, right? I'm a very curious individual, so make sure I keep that going,
mm,
and then um, make sure you take care of your health.
yeah,
Very important.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Touching on that, actually, you mentioned that your family, I don't know if that includes yourself as well, had gone through quite a number of health issues over the last few years. And lucky and very fortunate that where you are in a position here right now that has been able to support that and help that. Are you able to sort of share with us that journey and how I guess your financial journey has been to help support that? Because obviously this stuff to go through those challenges probably costs time, money, family, emotion, quite a lot of things that are involved.
Yeah, 100%. Look. I guess the most recent thing that we've done is we've taken on my parents and my wife's mum, to help take care of them,
Mhm.
basically. So they live in our house,
Yeah.
right? And we've got three kids as well. I'm hoping for a fourth. It's back to the abundant mentality thing. Got three girls. So I'm hoping for a boy. Fingers crossed for a boy, mate. We'll see how we go.
Let's go
I'll
for
take
it.
I'll take four girls though. Don't get me wrong. But four is enough. Four is enough for me because I grew up in a four kid household. So back to the question, mate. Yeah, helping my parents currently. Um, they were living in an area in the Gold Coast that's not the best area,
Mm.
right? Living literally 50 meters away from a major highway, right?
Ah,
Major freeway. And we just realized in the past few months that my mum was having lung issues, right? And she couldn't get over this cough that she's had. She's had a infection in her lungs, right? She couldn't get over it. And then we never understood how she got to that stage until such a time where we moved her over here and where we live. We live on an island, right? We live on an
mm.
island called Cuchimudlo Island here in Brisbane. Right? We took her on. Suddenly, she stopped coughing,
Wow.
right? right? And then we realized, damn, it must have been the pollution. So I
Yeah.
put two and two together and I said, well, you're surrounded by cars,
Yeah.
maybe not surrounded, but you're right next to the bloody freeway,
Mm.
you know? So it makes sense that you're not healing properly, right? So we brought them on, and essentially now they've lost a ton of weight. They're looking really healthy, right? They're spending a bunch of time with their grandchildren, which is awesome,
That's great. Yep.
right? And all in all, mate, like it's a massive change to their lifestyle.
Mm.
So that's one of the big things, and ultimately, I want to pay it back. I want to make sure that decision that they made from the front end, like back in 1995 when they decided to sell everything in the Philippines, um, you know, would
Yeah.
be paid back. You
Yeah.
know,
That's very admirable, and that's fantastic to hear that your mom's recovering. And yeah, it's just some things that you just can't see, unfortunately. And I can totally understand, because we were very similar to that. Not living next to a closer road, but there was something inside our house, and as soon as we switched houses, all the medical issues and stuff that we used to have disappeared. I'm like, oh, it's a simple thing like that. So we don't
yeah.
see it, but it happens, unfortunately, and that's what impacts our lives. So yeah, I guess it's just making those changes and then realizing, wow, it can make a huge impact, and that's fantastic. Well, moving forward, then looking to the future, we've kind of touched on this as well. You're excited. One part you've said that you're looking to grow your portfolio as well. But what are you most excited overall? In your say next 5 years of your journey.
Look, apart from growing my family and getting that boy or girl, I'll take whatever whatever
Whichever.
comes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's building my team, building the team, creating a training program for future advisors in the future, um, touching as many people's lives as possible, and making a big difference. One of the things that I didn't share earlier is, so I'm also a treasurer for a not for profit called Alive, which is a youth suicide prevention program, right? So what I always share with my clients is, my goal is to get you to your financial goals fast enough, and during that journey, right, we plant the seed of philanthropy, right?
Mm,
Because without St. Vincent's de Paul, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? My mum, my family would have starved, right, at that
mm,
in 1995. So I want to make sure we pass that on. We want to create that kind of philanthropic drive, right? So what am I excited about? Really making a mark, right? Creating that education, building a better education system, financial education system for people, right? Creating a philanthropic drive in the community so that we can help more people who are in need, right? And really helping build my team and help them achieve their version of financial freedom, right? Because it's not all about me; it's about what kind of impact you can make in other people's lives, right?
absolutely.
So that's what drives me moving forward.
That's wonderful. Well, Andrew, you've achieved quite a huge amount of success. You've got three very successful businesses. You've got a beautiful family of three children, possibly another one coming down the way. Wonderful
Fingers crossed,
family.
mate.
Fingers crossed. How much of that success is due to skill, intelligence, and hard work, and how much of it do you think has been due to luck?
Look, I think yeah, it's definitely not luck. I can guarantee you that much. It's definitely hard work. It's an obsession. Yeah, I boil it down to what Kobe said, right? If you can solve a problem, solve your problems with solve for point B with one problem at a time, right? And use the world as your resource, as your library, right? It's amazing how many problems you can solve and how much momentum you can build, right?
Mm,
So that curiosity piece is important. Coming from a place of abundance is important, and really throwing yourself in the deep end and understanding it from first principles is crucial, right? Far too many people jump in, take step 5 when they haven't even taken step 1, 2, and 3 yet, right? So you make sure you surround yourself with the right people and build up towards the goals that you're heading towards, right? Far too many people aim for luck. You don't want to be hoping for anything. You want to plan things out and pivot if it doesn't work out.
yeah, yeah, totally agree. That's fantastic. Well, Andrew, I want to say a big, big thank you so much for coming on to the Property Investory podcast. If listeners want to reach out to you to find out more about what you do, to support, to be able to help you get that financial literacy out there, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Look, best way is to follow me on Instagram at Andrew David Courtney, or link up with me on LinkedIn. Or if you want to reach out and book in a 15-minute phone call with me where we can just basically talk about your finances, ask me any questions you want, feel free to go to plenitudewealth.com.au. Happy to help.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you once again, Andrew, for coming onto the podcast today. You've had a very, very exciting story. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in the future. So wishing you all the best for that. And yeah, once again, big thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Tyrone. Much appreciated, mate. And maybe we can do it again at some time.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds fun.
Awesome,
Wonderful.
mate.